Hello everybody, it's Fufu here, and Pokebank has just been released today. That's very exciting. It means that in Pokemon Sun and Moon, you'll now have access to a lot of Pokemon that you didn't have access to before. And I'm going to consider its effect on VGC and the VGC meta at the moment. Now, obviously, you won't be able to use any of these new Pokemon because VGC is Alola Dex only, so you can only use the Pokemon we've already had access to. But some of those Pokemon were able to learn moves through breeding, but the Pokemon they need to breed with for those moves weren't available yet. So it is potentially going to have an effect on VGC because you can now have new moves on some of the Pokemon that you can use, which is really cool. So we'll be looking at that today. So I'll go over to the Trainer Tower website, which is a really great resource if you haven't been using it for VGC information and everything. I'll link it in the description for sure. This article is one that's come out very recently with just some ideas as to what new stuff could be potentially really good, and some of the stuff that might be a little bit more viable. It's worth noting though that a lot of the most used Pokemon are the Island Guardian Tapus and also Ultra Beasts, which don't breed, so they don't get any new moves. So it's unlikely that there's going to be a huge shift in what people use. But yeah, let's have a look at what we have access to now. There's a big list of all the egg moves that have been that you now have access to here, so you can take a good scroll there if you like. I'll go through some of the ones that aren't mentioned in this short article because they've just tried to pick up on the ones that they think will be the most viable. One is Vikavolt with Electro Web, which is a nice spread move that reduces the opponent's speed, although it's not super powerful because the Vikavolt is so powerful with a very high special attack stat. It still will do some damage, but it does only reduce speed by one stage. Vikavolt is very slow, so it probably will still be outsped, and it does have access to String Shot already, which hits both opponents and reduces speed by 2 stages. So if you want speed control, String Shot is maybe a bit more reliable, but if you want a spread move option that also maybe helps with the speed control, Electro Web is there now. So that is one to look out for. Alola Muck now gets Assurance. They think that could be very useful. Knockoff is nice, but there are lots of Z Crystal holders, so you don't get the knockoff boost with that. And also, once you've knocked something's item off, you will then be doing reduced damage because knockoff gets that boost with items that it can knock off. But Assurance, if the opponent takes damage in that turn, its power is doubled. So it starts at power of 60, it goes to 120 if the opponent takes damage already. Which has some nice synergy with Pokemon with spread moves. Like if one of your Pokemon goes for Rock Slide and then Muck goes for Assurance, you'll get that boosted damage, and it will be better for hitting things holding the Z Crystal. Whether or not it will replace Knockoff or be used in addition to it, I'm not sure. And it's also worth noting that Alola Muck will get Pursuit as well, so if you want to try and predict around switches, you could try to do that, but generally that probably won't be as useful, because a lot of the things that it's forcing out are actually fairies, and in VGC there isn't as much switching. When you've got Protect, you try and play around it that way and yeah, do some predictions on stuff. But Assurance is there for Alola Muck. They've also picked out Knockoff and Mandibuzz. We've just said though that Knockoff and Muck, though it is very powerful because Muck is a powerful Pokemon, it doesn't get the boost with a lot of Z Crystals running around. I think with Mandibuzz, knocking off berries could be very useful, but it's not going to be a powerful knockoff, and because of the Z Crystals, it might not be that useful. But it's there as an option for Mandibuzz. Foul Play might be doing more damage in terms of output though, so we'll see how much usage that might get. Machamp now gets Ice Punch, which is really nice for hitting the Garchomp. But whether or not that is enough to make it a little bit more viable, it's also nice to have really powerful fighting type hits, especially with Porygon 2 being very popular at the moment and Snorlax increasing in popularity all the time. So powerful Dynamic Punch is really nice. And then Ice Punch will help with Garchomp, but it is slow. There are lots of fairies running around, so we'll see if that has any effect on Machamp. One big one I think is Salazzle now gets Fake Out, which is really cool because it's just very helpful. Fake Out is a great move, stopping one of your opponents from moving. And what's interesting is at the moment Fake Out is kind of nerfed because Tapu Lele stops priority moves, but because Salazzle has a good special attack stat and stab poison type moves, Tapu Lele is not able to like be around this thing for too long, or else it'll just be taken out. So the best thing to stop fake out is not able to stop this thing's fake out very well, because it'll just get KO'd. So I think that's really cool, and I'm hoping we can see Salazzle being used a bit more effectively. It also gets access to Encore, which is really nice. It already had that, but I think it's just a cool Pokemon that we haven't seen used to its potential yet, and hopefully we'll see a bit more usage there. Clefairy and Clefable now get Heal Pulse so that they can be used better as support Pokemon. Clefairy, especially with that Friend Guard, is really nice. Only really seen it on the gimmicky EV teams, not seen it too much else, but maybe this will mean that we'll see a bit more of Clefairy. But there are so many viable fairy types at the moment that I don't know if that will happen or not. Gigalith also now gets access to Curse, which is cool. It doesn't get any recovery, but it does have that stand boost to its special defense, so boosting up its defense and attack that way could make it very hard to kill and very scary. In here they also mention that a lot of the time if you've got a Trick Room team with a Gigalith, on the last turn of your Trick Room, the opponent might opt to go for a double protect, and at that point you could try for a Curse there so that when Trick Room ends, your Gigalith is a bit bulkier and will be hitting a bit harder, which is a really nice idea. So maybe we'll see a bit of Curse Gigalith in the future. Very interesting to point out. And that's where they stop for egg moves. We do also now, because we've got access to older generation Pokemon where we had hidden abilities for those Pokemon which we don't have access to at the moment, we can now get those through breeding. So two examples are Unnerve, Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl hasn't seen too much usage at the moment, but Unnerve stopping those 50% berries from being eaten by the likes of Muck and Snorlax could be very useful, and it does get some really nice supporting moves there, as well as a fast Rock Slide, which is always good, but whether that's enough to make it a bit more viable, I don't know. And then also Porygon 2 gets Analytic. We've seen Download a lot get to trying for those special attack boosts, but that's obviously very reliant on your opponent's Pokemon and whether they have a higher defense or special defense for you to get the special attack boost. Analytic might be a bit more reliable because you know whether you're going to be faster or slower than most opponents, but the thing is Porygon likes to go for Trick Room, and it likes to be slow so that in Trick Room it moves first, so you won't be getting that Analytic boost. I don't know if that will see more or less usage. I guess that Download will probably still be the most popular, but Analytic will definitely see some usage, I would have thought. And then that's all they've mentioned in this article. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of others that I had spotted. It's interesting to note that Pelipper now gets knockoff. It won't be very powerful, but it does get it, which means that you can maybe get rid of some items, get rid of some of those berries, which can be really useful. But a much more important one, I think, is Power Split Araquanid, which could be really cool. Araquanid hits so hard, but it's because of its ability. Its actual attack stat isn't that high. It's only base 70. So you can power split an opponent with a much higher attack stat, for example Garchomp. The Garchomp will be a lot weaker, and your Araquanid will now be hitting even harder, if you can imagine that. That is going to be ridiculous power. So I would really like to play around with a power split Araquanid. I think that would be really fun. Yeah, so that could be really cool. There are a few other things that maybe are a bit cool, like a Feint on Serena, which is nice. Feint obviously stops Protect, and Protect is everywhere in VGC, so that could be quite interesting. We've got an Ally Switch Archeops, which might be quite fun. But other than that, there's not too much. The other thing I had seen was like Wigglytuff gets Heal Pulse, which will be really good. These are just random things though. I've gone off on a tangent. Tentacle gets some really nice buffs as well. Knockoff is always cool, and Muddy Water as well. And Tickle's quite useful in doubles too. But anyway, yeah, those are much less viable, and we probably won't be seeing too much of them. So yeah, it's definitely worth a look at what you can use now and what is available. There will be some changes to VGC, and I think in this period at the very least we'll be seeing people play around with these new toys and new moves on Pokemon, and I'm quite excited to try some things out too. I've got some VGC content coming very soon on my channel. But for now, that's going to be all. So all that's left to be said is I've been Fufu, you've been awesome, and hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.